Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's edition of the Coworking Values Podcast. I'm really excited because we've got this special advert from our sponsor. Let's jump into that.
What do you mean? Which sponsor? Oh, this sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Cobot, a leading management software for co-working spaces, offices, hubs, and flexible workspaces around the world. You know, one of the best things about Cobot is that it's produced by people who used to manage a co-working space and know the ins and outs of the main problems and issues that are bugging co-working managers. So if you want more time for your co-workers and community, check out Cobot at cobot.me and take your co-working management to the next level. And that was a bit from our sponsor.
So how's it in sunny Serbia today?
Oh, it's not sunny in Serbia. It's like minus 12 degrees with a little bit of snow, but we're waiting for snow like, in February, March, April, I don't know. So we'll see.
And here in London, it's grey with a slice of grey, and we'll be moving over to some grey later on. But enough about the weather. I'm super excited for our guest today, who is Steve, and we'll let him introduce himself in a second. We have our event coming up in London on the 28th of January, link in the show notes and all that, about how to build a vibrant co-working space with your local authority.
Is it an online event?
It's an online event, yeah.
Oh,
I tried to get...
Fantastic. So finally, other people than people in London can attend your events.
Yeah, because they are the best online events. I can't even finish that off. So, Steve, what are you known for, and what would you like to be known for?
What am I known for? I'm known for co-founding Central Working, co-founder of Ormeau over in Belfast, and I've also set up another business called Think Hearts and Minds. And I'm about to set up another business called Department X, which is all about bringing together the right sort of people in order to sort of push the whole co-working, hybrid working methodology across the country. That would be a great thing to be known for, as somebody who helps drive change for SMEs and small businesses in regional areas. That's what I'd love to be known for. A bit of a legacy.
Department X sounds very Men in Black, and yeah. I'm even if it doesn't work, I'm in.
Yeah, well, let's hope it does. We'll wait and see.
So we I remember. It doesn't mean we played golf every week since then, but I remember walking into Central Working in Bloomsbury in like 2010 and chatting with you then.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. And back then I ran I ran a very nice networking group, and we were looking for places to have networking groups. And I was just amazed at how Central Working like blew up in London. And I think it just hit exactly the right tone in a lot of places just before the, co-working ate itself in the middle of London.
Yeah.
And then, reason we encouraged you into this event is because you're one of the people I know in the UK that's actually gone along and has very early on understood the relationship between a local authority and a co-working space when local authorities didn't really know what a co-working space was.
Yeah.
They thought it was an incubator and all that type of stuff. So if you were a local authority, what would you be doing now?
If I was a local authority, I would be using funding and the government funding, which I predict will come in the course of the next few months as the rhetoric starts to dial up for SME businesses driving the economy and entrepreneurs and small business owners looking to contribute in the course of the next few years. A little bit like what happened almost after the financial crisis. What you saw was the small businesses and the entrepreneur businesses that sort of really drove the economy. And I think that will probably happen again. And I'm hopeful that sort of government and local authorities sort of see this opportunity and then start to put money into it. as well as private sector to be able to do that.
So why don't they see that? Is that the poverty of our explanation as an industry, or because they just don't realise?
I think it's not really been on people's agendas if they've sat in the regions and if they're sort of outside, sitting in the sort of tier 2 towns and cities. I think sort of the co-working and the hybrid model has always been something that really has sat in the larger places or the higher densities. Post-COVID, and with the change that seems to have happened, because you've almost got 10 years of behavior that's been condensed into sort of 12 months. And it's like somebody's just come up with the answer for remote working, even though it's been around for years, but it hasn't been allowed to flourish in the way that it was meant to, simply for the fact that larger businesses I don't really think they trusted people. And I think that work from home, if anybody put WFH in the calendar, people always used to think that they'd just be sitting around binge watching and not really doing a great deal and pressing the keyboard a few times. And now everything's changed. It's a complete turnaround. And people are much happier generally having the ability to be able to work from home when you can and where you can. That sounds a little bit like Boris, but you know what I mean.
I know. I definitely know you're not Boris. What is So in London, there's in zone 1 in London. Just in case you don't understand London, folks, it's like zone 1 is the middle, and then it goes out to zone 6. And for years, I've been looking for a co-working space on the east side of London. For a long time, there was just Mainyard, there was the Trampoline, Poplar, and there was like nothing outside of zone 2 that was a co-working space. And there's still very few spaces. That there's Creative Works, which is in near Black Horse Road in Walthamstow, and it's definitely got more populated in the last couple of years. But what do you think is going to happen now? Will people just cling on to the middle of London and hope it will work out, or will they blow up outside? I don't know why you keep saying blow up. I mean, like it's quite a negative thing. But
my view would be that we will start to see growth on the outside rather than just in the city centre. I think the next sort of 18 months, 2 years is going to be hard work for anybody who owns a lot of property in central London. I think the Pandora's box has almost just been opened, and it'll never get closed again. People like the idea of sort of being local, being able to walk to work or get to work sort of reasonably quickly. I don't know. I just can't see us going back to like 5 days a week, going into central London, getting on a train at 7:30 in the morning and it being absolutely packed and paying a fortune. I think the opportunity lies regionally, and almost, talent can be from anywhere. You've got online capability. It doesn't matter whether or not you're working in Serbia, whether or not you're working in central London, or whether or not you're working in the northeast. You can still access business and run a business and be part of a business. Sure, it's difficult sort of being separate and out of it, sitting in an office on your own, and not being a part of the bigger community. And I think that's still going to be sort of one of the main issues. But there's also a part where I think, going into work or going into the office will be sold as a benefit, but it'll be a hybrid working model where you can go in 2 or 3 days a week and the rest of the time you can be somewhere else.
That if I work for a big company, that would be really attractive. And at the end of last year, I moved into a space which is 20 minutes walk. It's actually 17.5 minutes walk from my house, and it's amazing. I am walking around going, why didn't I do this sooner? And this building has been here. It's called Work Hive, and it's in Ilford. It's the old Prudential building in Ilford in the High Street, and it just to find really hard to find a co-working space because I wasn't looking for an office space. And a bit of me wishes I just moved in here 3 years ago because I would have saved hours of commuting time, and I can sort of wake up, come here for a couple of hours and then go home again. And life is just lovely. And that sort of Vulcan death grip of like going into town because that's where it is. It's true to a lot of extent, but it's a bit kind of a redundant journey for a lot of the time. What is when you were like going around the country, how do you kind of compare what happens in London to the rest of, because London, thinks it is the UK sometimes. So, how does the rest of the country compare to how London operates?
I think other cities, other tier one cities, there is a similarity, and some of them have grown exponentially. You take somewhere like Manchester, that has grown exponentially with spaces and workspaces. Edinburgh, the same, some of the larger cities. But I think there is more opportunity in some of the regional towns where people can go. So even somewhere like Leeds, Leeds got outlying areas, and there's a massive sort of outflux, or there's been a massive outflux into Leeds from the outlying areas. But now even somewhere like Wakefield that's on the main motorway, and it's got access to trains, and it's got sort of people living in sort of semi-rural areas. There's huge opportunities for small businesses to start growing and to take spaces and be part of something else with other people, and like-minded people love to come together.
Yeah, they do. Like our friends moved from Ilford, which is just outside London, to Wakefield, and their house is like gigantic compared. And when they moved, I think this happens to everyone when they see their friend move out of town. I could do that. We had friends move from like the middle of London to Ipswich, and by an airfield nearly. And there's just no need to be holed up in a flat in the Barbican anymore. It's what about sorry, I forgot my question. Zelko, save me.
I'm just listening to you guys, and I'm like imagining life in as Steve would call it, a tier one city, because I've been living my whole life in a city of, that's on paper got 100,000 people, but essentially it is the whole city is a 15-minute city, as we already called it in our podcast continuously, and you can walk it or bike it, or everybody uses a car because people's mentality is still sit in a car and go somewhere, but we don't have that kind of a city transport model that connects every dot in the city, like a much bigger city. Looking at a bigger city in Serbia is also, it's bigger, but nowhere near London big. So the mentality as you go from a tier one city or a city like London to smaller cities is still very different. So people in smaller cities consider everything like needs to be in the center. So I know that the mentality even in London is, that's why the co-working spaces were in the center, but still here, if it's not in the center, then it's like too far away, even though you can walk it another 10 minutes, but the mentality is different. So what do you think is basically kind of the limit of going, when we talk about London and the development of outside zones and the opportunities for people or local authorities building co-working spaces or remote work spaces for saving people time and money and commuting and everything. So how much is that only for London, and where's the limit as far as the largeness of the city?
I don't think it is just for London. I think it's for I think it's for smaller towns, and smaller towns could be up to 150,000 people. I would imagine that some of the principles of this, as whether or not you apply it to the UK or whether or not you apply it to Serbia, but the behaviour of people will be similar in both areas. People like to be around other people. People like to be able to sort of network and work together and feel part of something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in the right environment that inspires you and everything is there,
Mm-hmm.
it just makes it easier. And the one thing about today and sort of where we are currently is convenience matters. And if you take a younger population or young people, everything is on demand. They want it now, but they want to be able to decide what they want, when they want, how they want. And to a certain extent, that is what some of these spaces provide. They
Mm-hmm.
provide access to people. They provide access to funding. They provide access to interesting people. And what you see happen is businesses start working together and start to collaborate together, as long as you have the right people in place who are making those connections.
I totally agree because the way we always created co-working spaces is, as we talked before the podcast, is like, each one of the spaces I know is not a corporate like franchise like WeWork or Regis or whatever it is. It is a privately owned co-working space with a focus on its own story. So one is an entrepreneurial center, one is a hub, one is only a co-working space for freelancers. The other is project financed, so they do a lot of other stuff and stuff like that. But it's always a focus on the people who get there and the businesses who can benefit the most by being there. So what would you think of, like, looking at the situation right now with the lockdown and the uncertain future of everything, for, if we talk about local authorities and future funding and future openings of co-working spaces, what would be the best approach for maybe somebody who's thinking of going, like, to open a co-working space and manage it? What would be his best, like, angle, spin, niche,
Opening line.
Opening line. What, to
Call the mayor.
To a local authority?
To a local authority or to his public. So to which kind of niche would you recommend him to focus on?
I think in terms of the local authorities, I think the answer is I can drive jobs, create wealth, and deliver a social value.
Mm-hmm.
And to the audience, it would be bring a community together of like-minded people. I think it's all, whenever you open spaces, I think it's always interesting and probably needed to identify, a sector.
Yeah,
you can be agnostic within that as well. So whilst you might focus on, let's say, digital, but digital is a really broad spectrum, and at the end of the day, if you've got a website, you're a digital business. I do think it's important to try and sort of build as much diversity as you can and bring various people together. You might have a core that sits within it that could be specific to a certain area. If you're in one area where there's a lot of creatives, then would it be about sort of creatives and technology, creative tech? If you've got another area that is sort of surrounded by sort of TV and film, then do you focus on TV and film, but you also allow other people in as well?
Mm-hmm.
The more diverse the community, the better it is, I found, over the course, because everybody's got something to offer and everybody knows somebody else.
Yep.
that could be the best contact that you've ever had.
Well, there's a couple of things that have come up in like conversations I've had, especially over the last year, with different areas outside London and different people from local authorities. And one of the frequently there's been some version of this is like, this young person lives in Ilford and they go into Shoreditch because they want to meet people there. Mm. And part of the challenge is to get all those people who go from Ilford, and this is a hypothetical example, but go from Ilford into Shoreditch because that's where all the cool kids are, to stay in Ilford and make it, and meet up here instead of going to Shoreditch. Yeah. Because it's like for the people listening, that is, I know, like a 20-minute train journey, but if everyone stayed here, and I think this is one of the advantages of what's happened is we've been forced to stay home and forced to go and network online, because I completely, that's how I got to know so many people, is like going into town and networking with people. But you could just do all that work here in this building here. There's a YouTube studio and a podcast studio, and it could become like Google Campus over the next year.
Yeah.
So it's almost like trying to retain the local talent, and I do think and you both of you talked about it, is saying, imagine all these people brought their sandwiches in Ilford and not in Liverpool Street. Imagine that, what that would do to the local economy.
Yeah, exactly. It will help to transform, and there will be some economist somewhere who's got a very clever formula that works out exactly how much extra that will add to the local area, and it's about pulling some of that together. But I think no matter what it is that is done, it needs to take a commercial element, and it needs to ensure that it's not going to lose money. But what you can see is huge upsides in a number of different parts that don't always get measured in terms of sort of value, social interaction, business growth. And for a lot of local authorities, they actually really don't know who the smaller businesses are within their area in terms of some of the micro businesses that are sitting under 10. And there's a whole load of sort of positive stories that can be told that at the minute remain a little bit unseen because it's real grassroots stuff.
I really agree with that. The other thing, and this is, sorry, local authorities that are listening, is as soon as something has brought to you by the local authority, it becomes instantly uncool.
Yeah.
Like it's easier to go to a leaky warehouse in Hackney and do your work than it is to go into something that was haphazardly designed and by the local authority, because there's several things I've been to where obviously a lot of effort has gone into it, but it just hasn't quite got the spirit of I want to build my business here. It hasn't got that like garage feel that.
Yeah. And that's very true. And that's why for local authorities and councils, they need to be the enablers. They can access money and fund that sort of we can't. But then to partner and work with the right operator who sees this not just as a purely commercial, let's rinse it approach, but somebody who actually puts sort of love, heart and soul into it. And sounds a really cheesy way of talking about it, but it really does come down to that. That's what people want. They want to be recognized. They need a level of love, and it needs to give the heart and soul in terms of the detail and create those moments.
Yeah, and you need to do something like, I'm trying to think of an example here, but like the one that popped in, so I'm going to go with that. It's the difference between getting Stormzy to run your local co-working space or Celine Dion because she's been going a long time. And when you have something which is a bit more of, has a bit more of a local edge on it, and and is relative to the people there. Because so many like business centers, just whenever someone says like enterprise center or business center, I just think of like slightly fat men in grey suits driving Vauxhall Cavaliers and reading Alan Sugar books and like so much of not just co-working, so much of business is not that anymore. We are at the end of our time here. So where can we find you online, Steve? And then we'll put a link in the show notes to the event, which is on 28th. And anyone is welcome to that. Obviously, it's really interesting for people in London, but as our mayor says, London is open. Where can we find you, Steve?
Well, as soon as I get the 2 websites up, I will let you know and I'll send you the link. Terrible, isn't it? I always tell people that they need a website and I don't bloody do it myself.
I know. I was thinking of a way to give you some jip about your lack of website, but we can find you. Can I point people to LinkedIn?
Yes, please do.
And
Pette.
Ace. And ladies and gentlemen, if you go to coworkingassembly.eu and wait for an embarrassingly short amount of time for someone who's a sophisticated marketer like me and Jelko, a little pop-up will come up, and every week you can get updates about our podcast here, our guests, all the events we're doing around Europe in the next few months.
And not only that, you can listen to past podcasts.
That's excellent. I was trying to think of a way to include you there in the final few minutes. That's a very good point. Any final words, sir?
No. I'm just hoping that people would benefit from the event, and we'll see you on the 28th.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, folks.
Excellent. Thanks, Bernie. Thanks, Elko.